Have you ever closed an app on your phone only to find your thumb hovering, almost unconsciously, to open it again just a few seconds later? Or maybe you found yourself in this strange, quiet moment, maybe waiting for a coffee or sitting on a bus, and an almost physical pull, a real sense of unease, washes over you until you have your phone back in your hand. Scrolling through the lives of others, what if I told you that this feeling isn't a simple lack of willpower? And what if I told you that it's not even really about the phone itself? It's about what's happening deep inside your own mind. The question isn't just, are we addicted to our phones, but a much more profound one. How is our constant connection to social media fundamentally reshaping the very architecture of our brains? We often talk about social media in terms of what we see: the photos, the arguments, the carefully crafted updates. But the real story, the one that truly matters, is invisible. It's a silent, constant conversation happening between the code on a screen and the ancient wiring in your head. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that conversation. We're going to explore the psychology and the subtle neuroscience of how these platforms are influencing your thoughts, your emotions, and even your sense of self, without you ever needing to see a single image. This isn't a lecture, and it's not a warning to throw your phone in the river. Think of it as a friendly chat, a moment to get curious about the beautiful, complex, and incredibly adaptable machine that is your brain, and how it's learning to navigate a world it was never originally designed for. Let's start with a feeling we all know. The little flutter of excitement when you post something, a picture, a thought, an update. You send it out into the digital ether, and then you wait. A minute passes. 5 minutes. You check your phone. Nothing yet. You put it down, try to focus on something else, but part of your mind is still out there, waiting. And then it happens. A notification, a like, a comment, and for a fleeting moment, you feel a little ping of pleasure, a tiny, satisfying rush. What you're feeling is one of the most powerful chemicals in your brain: dopamine. For a long time, we've called dopamine the pleasure chemical, but that's a bit of a misnomer. It's more accurately the motivation chemical. It's the neurotransmitter of anticipation, of seeking, of wanting. It's the force that drove our ancestors to hunt for food and search for a safe place to sleep. It rewards us not so much for having something, but for the pursuit of it. And this is where social media becomes extraordinarily clever. The platforms are designed, whether consciously or by a process of digital evolution, to be perfect dopamine delivery systems. But they don't just give you the reward. They make you work for it just a little. That little red notification bubble, the number of likes slowly ticking up, these are not predictable. You don't know when they'll come or how many you'll get. This is what psychologists call a variable reward schedule. Imagine a slot machine in a casino. You pull the lever. Sometimes you win a little, sometimes you win nothing, and very rarely you hit the jackpot. It's the sometimes and the maybe that keeps you pulling the lever. If it paid out every single time, it would be predictable and, eventually, boring. If it never paid out, you'd walk away. But the unpredictability is intoxicating. Every time you refresh your feed, you are, in a neurological sense, pulling the lever on a slot machine. You're asking the question, is there a reward waiting for me? A like, a comment, a new piece of interesting content, a message from a friend. Most of the time, the reward is small or non-existent. But sometimes, there's a little jackpot. And that's enough to wire a powerful habit deep into your brain. Think of a time you were feeling a bit down, or bored, or lonely. What was your immediate, almost instinctual reflex. For millions of us, it's to reach for the phone. We are, in essence, self-medicating with these tiny, unpredictable hits of dopamine. We're seeking that little rush of validation, that feeling of connection, that momentary distraction from whatever uncomfortable feeling we're trying to avoid. We're not seeking happiness, not really. We're seeking the anticipation of happiness, and the platforms know this. The endless scroll is not an accident. There is no bottom to the page because a stopping point is a signal to your brain to disengage. Without one, you can scroll into infinity, always believing the next great post, the next dopamine hit, is just a flick of the thumb away. This creates a feedback loop that can be incredibly difficult to step out of, not because we are weak, but because it's targeting a part of our brain that is ancient, powerful, and designed for survival now. Let's talk about something else. You've probably noticed that feeling of fragmentation, the difficulty in sinking into a task for a long period. Maybe you sit down to read a book, a physical book with paper pages, and after 2 or 3 pages, your hand starts to itch. You feel a pull, a mental restlessness. You tell yourself you'll just check one thing, just for a second, and an hour. Later, the book is still sitting there, your place lost. This isn't just you, and it isn't just a pop culture myth about shrinking attention spans. It's a very real phenomenon rooted in one of the brain's most remarkable features, neuroplasticity. This is the idea that our brain is not a fixed, static organ. It is constantly changing, adapting, and rewiring itself based on our experiences and behaviors. The connections between our brain cells, our neurons, get stronger the more we use them, and weaker the less we use them. Think of it like paths in a forest. The more you walk down a certain path, the wider and clearer it becomes. The paths you neglect become overgrown and harder to find. For thousands of years, our brains have been trained in deep, focused attention. Learning to hunt required hours of silent observation. Reading a book, learning a craft, having a long, meaningful conversation, these activities all strengthen the neural pathways for sustained focus. They build a superhighway for deep thought. Now, consider the world of modern social media, particularly short-form video feeds. A 15-second video, a 30-second clip, a new scene, a new sound, a new context, every few seconds. When you spend hours a day scrolling through this kind of content, you are actively training your brain. You are telling it, over and over, that the most important skill is to rapidly switch contexts, to absorb a tiny bit of information, get a microdose of emotion or humor, and then immediately move on to the next, entirely unrelated thing. You are, in effect, carving new paths in that forest. You're building an incredibly efficient network for rapid-fire, shallow engagement, and as that network gets stronger, the old superhighway for deep, sustained focus begins to get a little overgrown. Your brain, being the wonderfully efficient machine that it is, starts to prefer the new, exciting, fast-paced path. It starts to crave that constant stimulation. So when you're faced with a single, slow, unchanging task, like reading a chapter of a book, your brain feels understimulated. It feels bored. The silence is jarring compared to the constant noise it has become accustomed to. That itch you feel in your hand is your brain saying, "This isn't what we do anymore. Where's the next hit? Where's the next context switch?" It's not that our brains are becoming worse. They are simply adapting to the environment we've placed them in. We are training our minds for sprints, and then wondering why we struggle with marathons. The challenge is that much of what is meaningful in life, building a skill, nurturing. A relationship, solving a complex problem, requires the marathon of sustained attention. And we are, bit by bit, making that marathon feel more and more like an uphill struggle against our newly trained instincts. So our brains are being trained for constant, seeking and shallow engagement. But what about how we feel? What about the emotional texture of our lives? This brings us to perhaps the most human and most painful aspect of social media's influence: the comparison trap. Humans are social creatures. It's hardwired into our DNA, and a fundamental part of being social is comparing ourselves to others. It's how we gauge our own progress, our status within the tribe, and our sense of normalcy. For most of human history, our tribe was small. We compared ourselves to our neighbors, our cousins, the people in our village. We saw their successes, but we also saw their struggles, their bad days, their messy realities. Our comparison pool was realistic and grounded. Social media has taken this natural human tendency and amplified it a billionfold. Our tribe is no longer the village, it is now the entire world. And we are not comparing our reality to their reality. We are comparing our behind-the-scenes footage to their highlight reel. When you scroll through your feed, you are not seeing a random, representative sample of human life. You are seeing a meticulously curated gallery of peak moments: the perfect vacation, the promotion at work, the beautiful, happy children in matching outfits, the marathon finish line, the flawlessly clean kitchen. Our conscious, logical mind might know that this isn't the whole story. We know there was stress in packing for that vacation, that the promotion came after years of struggle, that the kids were screaming 2 minutes before that photo was taken. But our subconscious brain doesn't always get the memo. On a deep, emotional level, what the brain processes is an endless stream of evidence that everyone else is happier, more successful, more attractive, and living a more exciting life than we are. It creates a social comparison baseline that is utterly impossible to live up to. Think of it like this: if you eat a piece of fruit, it tastes sweet and delicious. But if you spend all day eating candy, that same piece of fruit will taste bland and unsatisfying. Social media, in a way, is like an all-day candy buffet for social comparison. It recalibrates our expectations of what a normal or good life is supposed to look like. Our own life, with all its mundane moments, its quiet struggles, and its ordinary days, can start to feel deeply inadequate in comparison. This isn't just about feeling a little bit of envy. It can create a chronic, low-grade sense of dissatisfaction, a feeling that you are somehow falling behind, that you are not enough. It can be a quiet thief of joy, stealing the pleasure from our own perfectly good moments because they don't seem to measure up to the polished, filtered, and cropped versions of life we see on our screens. The irony is profound. We often turn to these platforms seeking connection, but can end up feeling more alone and isolated than ever before, lost in a sea of perceived perfection that makes our own reality feel flawed. So, where does this leave us? We've talked about the dopamine slot machine in our pockets, the rewiring of our attention, and the impossible ladder of social comparison. It can sound bleak, as if we are helpless against these powerful forces. But the goal of understanding this isn't to create fear or to demonize technology. The goal is empowerment. To be aware of the slot machine doesn't mean you can never pull the lever again. It means you can recognize the urge for what it is a craving for, a dopamine hit, and you can make a conscious choice about whether to indulge it. You can begin to notice the invisible pull and ask yourself, What am I really seeking right now? Am I bored? Am I lonely? Am I avoiding a difficult task? Sometimes, simply naming the feeling is enough to loosen its grip. To understand neuroplasticity is to realize that just as your brain can be trained for distraction, it can also be retrained for focus. The path to deep thought may be overgrown, but it is not gone forever. You can choose to walk it again. You can put the phone in another room for an hour and pick up that book. It will feel hard at first. Your brain will resist. But with every page, you are tamping down the undergrowth, clearing the way. You are reminding your brain that sustained attention is a skill worth having. And to recognize the comparison trap is to learn how to view social media with a new kind of emotional intelligence. It's to remind yourself, actively, that you are looking at a highlight reel. You can begin to cultivate a sense of compassion for yourself and for the people behind the posts, who are also, in their own way, just trying to feel good enough. You can consciously shift your focus from what you lack to what you have, practicing gratitude not as a cliché, but as a genuine act of mental self-defense. Social media is not a villain in this story. It is a tool, but it is one of the most powerful tools ever invented for capturing human attention. It was built by some of the smartest minds of a generation to do exactly what it does: keep you engaged. There is no malice in its design, only an incredibly effective alignment of commercial incentives and human psychology. The real story isn't about them, it's about us. It's about our beautiful, vulnerable, and astonishingly adaptable brains. The digital world has reshaped our landscape, but it doesn't have to dictate our inner world. By understanding the forces at play, we move from being passive users to conscious participants. We can start to use these tools on our own terms, for our own reasons. The great challenge of our time is not to reject the digital world, but to learn how to live in it without losing ourselves, to find the quiet in the noise, to reclaim our attention, and to remember that the most filtered, liked, and shared life in the world is no match for the simple, profound beauty of your own unfiltered reality. The ultimate question, then, is a simple one. In this constant, silent conversation between the screen and your mind, who gets to have the final word?